Nisa, wanted to, ask you. I think you've spoken quite a bit about, and you mentioned as well now about your experiences with, mental health challenges in the past, right? Could you share a bit more about, your experiences, your journey, and what you went through, right?
Yeah, thanks, Shobna, for asking. I think, I've often shared the story that when I sort of joined the Godrej group, I used to have a table that had to face a window because I would cry quite often out of sort of frustration. But I don't think I've ever sort of, maybe in smaller groups, but not fully shared this story. So I think as a child, I was always quite an intense sort of child. But what started happening sort of in my early 20s is what, I think Amit talked about, which is this losing your vitality, correct? You don't want to get out of bed. You have thoughts where, the world is totally empty and there's nothing for you sort of in the world. Um, I think I somehow managed maybe to fake it a little bit so I would get out of bed, even though I didn't feel like it. But, you're just about functioning. You're not functioning at a sort of your normal level or a level that you should. And, at that time, my father said, maybe you need to meet a doctor. There could be, very, and I'm lucky to have him because he didn't make a big deal about it, correct? And he said, I've read that the medication, simple stuff that you can take. I think what Amit said, you can, this is not the, like you go to a doctor for something else, you could go. So at that time, I had gone actually to a psychiatrist. They diagnosed me as bipolar. So it's, bipolar is that it's obviously a spectrum, but that you'd have depressive episodes and then you'd have, the opposite, which is extremely increased vitality. I, in hindsight, think it was actually a misdiagnosis. At that time, it was probably just clearly depression. Um, and I took medication for about 6 months. Unfortunately, the medication didn't really work for me, and I think that maybe came from the misdiagnosis. So some of the issues continued, and then actually a friend of mine suggested that I see a psychotherapist called Udayan Patel. Unfortunately, he passed away maybe 7 or 8 years ago, but he was sort of amazing. And I did quite a few years of therapy with him. And basically, what cognitive, although he was a bit Freudian, and he had a mixture of stuff that he was doing. But talk therapy, I think in some cases can be as effective as drugs. I think there's data out there. Obviously, in some cases, you do need the medicine and you need a mixture of thought therapy. But talk therapy sort of really worked for me, and it sort of trains your mind. It helps, and maybe Amit can maybe mention how it works more eloquently than me, but it can help you. It can help you with your thinking, correct? When you go into
Right.
these episodes or something that's happening, it made me realize that sitting in a bathroom crying by myself, that I am not actually alone, correct? This is my brain chemicals, whatever, sort of doing it. And it changed my life. Initially, even though, my father was very open about it and supportive and stuff, my parents said, why do you talk about it so openly, correct? So even in a family like mine that's very liberal, very open, there was a little bit, uh, how are you branding yourself or what are you telling other people? So I think that's also an issue in India, that why is this any different than having, I have high cholesterol. I've tried through diet and exercise to manage it. It didn't work, so now I take a statin, correct? So in the same way, if I have it's the same thing. So I think my experience, I think like Amit talked about is magic, correct? That you can actually have these challenges, and with the right help from doctors, with support from family, from friends, you can overcome them. And I think